All right, now to our next conversation. The National Information Technology Development Agency is to create a framework for the planning, research, development, and regulation of information technology practices and systems in Nigeria. About 30 months ago, the agency introduced the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation in a time when normalcy has shifted more to virtual and data. The National Information Technology Development Agency has a lot of work to do, but they will start with what they have done so far. And we're having this conversation with the Director, E-Government Development and Regulation, Dr. Vincent Olatunji. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good morning. Well, first of all, help us understand what you've been doing. You've been in existence for 20 years. What have you also been doing with data protection?
Thank you very much. As already mentioned, NITDA was established in 2001 after the approval of a national IT policy for the country. And our mandate is mainly to implement the national IT policy, to regulate the IT sector in Nigeria, and offer advisory services to all Nigerians, especially in the area of information technology. Now, coming to the issue of data protection, we know that with the advent of information technology in the early 80s, almost everything is moving online now, and that's actually changed the way we do things, the way we relate, the way we interact and do everything. And through that, it's like we're moving almost everything online. And what has happened recently, more importantly with the COVID, that almost everything was done online during the COVID, and going forward, that is what is going to be happening. And now we have a global digital economy, which is driven by data, and you see data as a critical resource in anything you want to do online. There's no way you want to do this that you won't upload your data, your information, and there is need to protect your privacy, whatever you share online, and that is what really bring about the issue of having data protection. Now, maybe we should just lay a foundation for the issue of data protection and privacy. It actually started with Convention 109 of European countries, and that was what really laid the foundation where all countries within the European Union came together to look at the issue of data privacy, and it was actually exposed for signature on the 28th of January 2001, and that is why we celebrate annual Data Protection Day on January 28th of every year. And looking at Nigeria, the foundation was laid in our constitution precisely by Section 37 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, which talked about privacy and individual rights. Now, looking at what is happening globally and the need and the fact that we have to put our information and data online, we felt it is important for us in NITDA. That was as far back as about 3 or 4 years ago that we should put something out there to create confidence and trust in whatever we are doing online. And that was why in 2019 we came up with the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, which we have started implementing. And the foundation also was based on the Convention 108 and closely linked to the global general data protection regulation of the European Union. And our own data protection regulation here is actually localized to what we are doing in Nigeria, and to ensure that we protect the right and freedom of our citizens wherever they have their data, either within or outside Nigeria. And this regulation covers whatever you do with people's data, both in the private and the public sector organizations, to ensure that whatever we put online, whatever we do online is adequately protected by law in Nigeria. And with this, we are kind of trying to create confidence and trust in whatever we do in terms of data sharing in Nigeria. And I think what is really important is for us to ensure that whatever we have there is integrity in terms of data protection. And we have put in place so many structures to ensure adequate implementation. And I'm glad to report that between when the regulation was issued and now, we've made a lot of successful, we've gained a lot of success, a lot of traction through what we've been doing in the implementation of the data protection in Nigeria.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Vincent, a lot of Nigerians will still ask about, can I really trust the system with my data? And that's why sometimes when the government is telling people, oh, you need to do this and you need that, there are a lot of questions. But other than that, how has the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy impacted on the objective of diversifying the economy? Because that is where we are at now. We're getting to the end of oil, so we're talking of diversifying the economy.
Thank you very much. I think the issue of diversifying our national economy is really important. More importantly, that the oil that we depend on is drying up gradually, and a lot of, due to innovations, there are so many things coming up that oil may not really be a critical resource globally, and that's why we're talking about a knowledge economy. And what we have in Nigeria now, we have a national digital economy policy and strategy under the supervision of our Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy. The plan is based on 7 major pillars, where you have digital developmental regulations, you have solid infrastructure, service infrastructure, soft infrastructure. We have some pillars dealing with innovations and entrepreneurship. We have some sections dealing with indigenous content promotion and digital transformation. Now, if you look at all these pillars that we have laid out, what we are trying to do is to ensure that there are so many activities that will bring together to ensure that we have a robust national digital economy for the country. And there are roles for all stakeholders to play, where the government is to create the enabling environment, and the private sector organizations to come in for investors, and even for the media, for the advocacy group that will go out there to talk about what we are doing in the area of digital economy. And we're happy to report that between when the policy was launched and now, the contribution of this sector to our GDP is over 14.78% now, as compared to less than 4% some years back. And this is the new trend globally. And we cannot, as a country, we cannot say we don't want to go through that route, because if we want to continue to depend on our oil, to get a state that it will no more be relevant. And when you are talking about a global digital economy, that is really important. And if you tie this to what we have done with the NDPR, that is why it is really important to look at both together. For instance, between when we started implementing the NDPR and now, we have created a market, an economy on its own, that is worth over 5.2 billion naira currently. And this sector has employed over 2,600 people. That is within 30 months of implementing the NDPR. And we have licensed, I think what really, why we have really achieved this much is the fact that we are working with the private sector organizations to ensure implementation, because there is one thing for you to have a policy or a plan or a regulation, is another thing for it to be effectively implemented. And through the data protection compliance organizations that we have licensed, we have 3 of them, that's why we're able to achieve this. So everything coming together, we are still looking at that, having a national digital economy, and the policy is what is driving it. And this NDPR is directly under pillar 1 of having developmental regulation for the digital economy sector in Nigeria.
Okay. Still looking at regulation, NITDA has issued 2 NDPR fines. Can you run us through what was considered, and what should Nigerian companies, watch out for to avoid, unnecessary regulatory sanctions?
Thank you very much. I think one approach that we have used effectively for us is carrot and stick. And we believe more in encouraging organizations to comply. We want it to be a culture, not that you are being forced to comply, or we want to go all out to issue fines before you comply. So we are doing a lot in the area of awareness creation, public sector organizations, private sector organizations, to ensure that they comply. Now, it is only when it is extremely difficult for us to really encourage you, and it is clearly obvious that you have some breaches in your data, that we all now go out to issue fines. And these fines are still part of the administrative procedures. We have not taken any organization to court. So the 2 fines that were issued are mainly through administrative procedures. One for a public sector organization and another one for a private sector organization. Usually, what happens is when the data breach is reported to us, the supervisory authority, that is NITDA, we send a team back. We have an investigation team made of experts from different fields who are staff of NITDA and the officers from the Nigerian Police Force. We move into your organization. We write to you to explain to us what has happened. Because ideally, under the data protection regulation, you are supposed to report a data breach. You're calling your system within 72 hours. If that is not done, if you have to come to you, we will write to you to explain what has happened. After your explanation, there are some questionnaire that you fill. We'll come to your organization to do practical examination, evaluation of what has happened. Then if it's noticed that you are taking steps, remedial steps to ensure that you guard against this, then we cannot talk of issue administrative fines. So these two organizations that we have sanctioned, when these breaches happened, we invited them, we discussed with them, and immediately took remedial actions. And that was why their fines, I wouldn't say not too, the fines were not too big, but at least to show that, yes, we have a supervisory authority that will monitor you, that will sanction you when you don't protect the rights and freedom of citizens in terms of their data they are handling. So we have issued one for public sector and another one for the private sector. But the aim is not only about fines, it's about encouraging people to comply and ensuring that compliance is not a matter of culture, not something that somebody will stand behind you and be holding one big stick to hit you before you comply.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note that a government organization does not see compliance as a means of making revenue for the government. Well, recently, NITDA issued a public advisory on the use of WhatsApp. Tell us, what was that all about?
Thank you very much. I think January 4th this year, there was an update in the privacy policy of WhatsApp. Since it was acquired by Facebook, the advice was that they will now begin to share your data, your information with Facebook, which is their parent company. And when we saw that as the regulatory body in Nigeria and as being part of our mandate to issue advisory services to government and Nigerians, we issued an advisory service, an advisory notice to Nigeria that this is what has happened with WhatsApp's privacy policy. That is, they can now share your data with Facebook, and we encourage Nigerians. We notified Nigerians that if you want to go ahead, you can, but there are other options that you can use on social media that you can share your information or interact with people. But looking at the way we use WhatsApp in Nigeria, it has become part of us, and that is why it's really important for us to let Nigerians know what is happening and what is going on.
All right. All right.
After the issuance of the notice, we got we met. Right. We actually met with Facebook. They came to us and we discussed, and they are now saying that the advisory, the update is mainly for optional business features in the WhatsApp privacy policy. That is not compulsory, and they are going to encourage people. They are going to notify them to update their privacy policy. So it's not actually compulsory. You have a choice. You can do it or not.
All right, Dr. Olatunji. Thank you so much for watching our backs and ensuring that we are in safe territory when we are using WhatsApp and other social media. Dr. Vincent Olatunji is the Director, E-Government Development and Regulation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and enjoy the rest of the day.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll take a short break. Now, when we come back, Business Morning continues. To stay with us.